ConstructionCast. Very excited this morning because we've got some very interesting and lively speakers who I will try and keep under control for the next 30 minutes or so. For those of anyone that's not been to these before, we've got 30 minutes of chat and hopefully some Q&A at the end. Laura is on hand if you have any technical issues, so do email laura@limeslade.com if you have any technical issues, because I am not capable of doing this and replying to messages and everything else that goes on while this is happening. So you should find in the chat that Laura has just posted a little message there to let you know who she is and what's going on. If you have any questions for the panelists, I hope you do pop those into the Q&A box, which I shall try and find, so that when we get to the end, I can put some of the questions, or if we're lucky, all of the questions to the panel. So I'll introduce the speakers to you. So we have at the top of my screen, Mike Thornton. Mike is, well, I'll read his official biography, which might take me some time, but I've abbreviated it so it won't take too long.
Don't bother.
Mike is a leading property management executive with over 18 years experience, both as in-house facilities manager as portfolio director in the London market. He's a partner, I think he's partner, he'll probably correct me if I got his job title wrong, at Knight Frank, who are the lead sponsors this year of the Club Peloton Cycle to Mippim. Below that on my screen, we have Nick Hanmer. Nick's the chief executive of Club Peloton. I think he's been described in the past as Mr. Cycle to Mippim. Club Peloton, for anybody that hasn't come across them, I don't know how you've managed to miss them. It's the charity that rides to Mippim every year. So I say we because I've managed to get myself a place again this year, cycle 900 miles to Cannes from London, through, I think this year, hopefully through the Alps and down into the south of France. So Nick spends most of his time meeting and talking to people with a passion for cycling, networking and charitable fundraising for the property and music and motor industries. And most of the money goes to a charity called Quorum, but they also raise money for other charities such as Cyclists for Cancer or Cyclists Against Cancer. I can't remember if it's for or against. Nick will tell you a little bit more perhaps about that in a minute. Finally, Amanda Illing is the chief executive of Gatehouse Chambers. So Amanda joined Gatehouse in 2009 when they used to be known as Hardwick. Her role as CEO is to take a lead in the strategic development and management of Chambers and to implement its business plan. She also spends a lot of time mentoring and supporting people to increase opportunities. She's a big advocate for diversity, supports the Free Bar, a forum focused on LGBT plus people and their allies. She's also a trustee of the London Legal Support Trust. Frankly, I don't know how she finds time to do all this. She also has a farm, but that's a different story entirely. And also, she is, as we've just discovered, the person behind hula hooping on the beach at Mippim. So maybe we'll find out a bit more about that in a minute. So that's all the speakers. We shall get straight on to the questions. So I'm going to start with Nick. And I thought when I wrote these questions, I was like, well, this will be one for Mike or Amanda. But actually, I'm going to start with Nick with this one because he thought this might be one for him. So it's interesting. So do people win work at Mippim, Nick? Very short and sweet.
I'm sure they do, without a doubt, but over the years, it's kind of proved very much the case that kind of Cycle to Mippim as an event and sort of 6 or 7 days of intense companionship and shared experience have delivered teams of people that have gone on to work together for a decade or so on various projects. So, I don't think it's just Mippim that we should be focusing on. Certainly the cycle ride has proved its value and worth in terms of bringing people together to collaborate on projects in the future.
Exactly. And I think, there are other things as well. I think, Amanda, I don't know if what's your experience of winning work at Mippim or before or after or around as a result of it? Have you got any experiences yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you can, and certainly we have, but we don't set out with that as the sort of ultimate reason for going. There's lots of other reasons to go, and the biggest one is the relationship building opportunity, because you are in a space where lots of other people are there who you want to meet because you know them, or the random encounters. So I think obviously it takes some resources in terms of people's time away from their desks and their normal work, and the cost of going and the cost of staying there and so on. And if you host any events, but I don't think you should measure your success by the immediate work that you may take away with you. I think it's much more nuanced about the relationships that you make.
Exactly, and I think that's the kind of the thinking behind my question, because I do think there are some people, particularly some employers, who think that, you know, if we're going to spend all this money on sending somebody to MIPIM, they best come back with at least 4 contracts, you know, that sort of thing. And I don't think that necessarily is the case. And then, Mike, do you guys go specifically to win work and expect to come back with contracts? How does it work for Knight Frank?
So Knight Frank Corporate, it's a massive marketing thing for us. As you come onto the London stand, you can see the Knight Frank arena there with all of the banners and everything, and obviously we're headline sponsors for Cycle to Cannes as well. But for us, it's not about winning work, it's having that sort of presence and building a rapport and sort of knowing who's who. And having now been down there 3 times myself, you just literally walk along the Croisette or whatever, and you're bumping into people who you know, and Amanda talked about random encounters, and I think you build up a bond and a sense of trust with people that you would look to work with, who wouldn't necessarily be at the forefront of your mind before. So one example is a bloke on this call, actually. I've just seen Rick Booth, who couldn't be bothered to go to Mippim this year so far, but he said, if I did end up getting a quick flight, can I kip on your floor? Now, he's someone who I met on Cycle to Cannes in 2018. We're in sort of different businesses, but you know, we have managed to pass each other some potential work, or at least network, over the last few years. So sorry to drop you in there, Rick. But yeah, that's a good example of where MIPIM as a thing, and the Cycle to Cannes really cements relationships.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, and certainly and one thing, you know, going right back to Nick's answer is, you know, the ride to Down is phenomenal in terms of cementing relationships and things like that. There's a particular architect who, Mike, you'll remember I was on a bus with after a particularly cold and wet stage of the Cycle to MIPIM, who I've been friends with ever since, because we have a bond of near death that led to us being quite good friends as a result of sitting on the bus shivering and shaking and recovering from that particularly cold stage. But it's those friendships that are forged at those sort of moments, but also through the week or the days that you're down there, through bumping into each other, going to the pub and all those sorts of things that you just wouldn't normally do in London or wherever you're based. So if I can start, having just finished with you, Mike, if we could start with you on the next one, which is looking at how do you make the most effective use of your time there and build some of those meaningful relationships? What's the best way to go about it?
So for me, the first thing I did was accept the first lunch, and I was invited to the day after Cycle to Cannes, because I'm going to be pretty hungry. But I think really early on, you know, 6-8 weeks in advance of MIPIM, you need to get it out there that you're going, and then just naturally your network of colleagues and friends and associates, they end up getting hold of you, and you end up starting to get meetings in your diary, and then you end up with conflicts of meetings in your diary, and you need to prioritize. So it's really, once you get to know your way around Cannes, and you have got that good network of people, that everyone is really friendly. You know, it's probably the first time we've seen any UV rays for about 5 months. So people are a lot more approachable, and you can bump into pretty senior people who you haven't been able to get in the door with over the last year, but they're willing to give you some time. So I would just take advantage of every moment that you have down there.
Brilliant. Amanda, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with Mike on that. And I think you can overload your diary. So there's a danger in that. There's always a comfort when you're going down there, and particularly if you work in an organisation where there are these expectations of what you're going to do and spend your time doing. But I think have meetings in your diary. One of the things that we do is put it on an email footer sort of 5, 6, 7 weeks before you go, so that people that you are in contact with see it as well. It's the, you know, and it's the social media stuff that you might do and so on. But leave space in your diary so that you can have the random encounters, or if you're at something and somebody invites you, you know, to go with them, because it is a time when people are really open and friendly. And as Mike says, the sun's often shining, but do take an umbrella just in case. And the other thing are the sort of fringe activities. So of course you've talked about the cycle to MIPIM, but there's lots of other fringe activities there as well. And that's just another way of making use of time that isn't a sort of coffee, you know, what do you do? Can we trade sort of thing. It's much easier than that. And actually, if you can just be yourself and be in the space and do something else together, like running or yoga or hula hooping, then you build relationships that way as well.
I think this is your moment, Amanda. Tell us about the hula hooping, because we need to know a bit more about it.
Well, there's a website that you can go to. Can't immediately remember what it is, but you can post fringe activities or activities of things to sign up to. Some you pay for, some you don't. And so I decided a few years ago, after doing the yoga with my colleague Deborah with a hangover, I thought, I can't be upside down, on a Wednesday morning. I'll do something that I can stand up, but that is a sort of early morning activity, so that I'm sort of up and out there. So I posted hula hooping on the beach. And yeah, we did it for 2 days of the 5-day period. And just people turned up, and it was great because you just meet all sorts of people who give it a go. And
And just to butt in, Amanda, sorry, and to do Stuart's job for him, because Daniela's asked a question. Daniela, getting hold of Amanda, and who deals with, you have sort of gatherings for women at MIPIM, don't you, Amanda? So she would be a good port of call for you to improve your network and start to schedule meetings. And on your question on whether it's worth going to the conference or whether it's better just to schedule meetings, this year I'm only going for a couple of days, and I'm not going to the conference. I know enough people now to be able to drag them out and grab a coffee socially, locally. There's no tech or kit or particular presentations that I'm looking to go to this year. So I would have a look at what the program of events are, and if nothing there really floats your boat, then you could save yourself some money by not actually paying to go in and work in the periphery.
If there's anyone from MIPIM, the organisers, watching, of course, we don't recommend you do that, because you should pay for a full ticket. But yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, if I'm honest, the first time I went, I'd obviously invested quite heavily in a charity ride to MIPIM, and I didn't have a ticket either. And that was the first time I went. So it's definitely, you can certainly fill your time with plenty of meetings. I was amazed the first time I went at how quickly my diary filled up, despite never having been before, having only set up my business about 6 months beforehand, and really not knowing anybody in the world of property and real estate and the people that go there at all. So yeah, definitely, you can certainly do all of that. But equally, I don't know if Mike, I assume have had a ticket for the full event before. Is it? Yeah. And is that equally worthwhile, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to look around and go to the different stands. And I was a panelist for one of the people on who did a presentation, and it was really good to be a part of that. But just looking at this call today, there's at least 12 people on this call who I now know through Cycle to Can or MIPIM. So you do quickly build up your own network that kind of negates the need for you to have to run around the conference.
Yeah.
Sorry if that's the wrong thing to say.
It's quite common for people on the ride to not know anybody at the start and end up not only with a lot of friends from the ride, but to have a whole bunch of kind of calendar invites for the forthcoming week, and for it to fill up that way.
Yeah, but
can I just pick up on the MIPIM ladies point? So there is a MIPIM ladies group, and it is usually Thursday. The drinks are usually Thursday. The first year there were about 30 of us, and I think the last time it was sort of 200 of us or something like that. It was amazing. So do reach out if you want to know about MIPIM ladies, because also the continuation of the relationship is MIPIM ladies is now a sort of group that meets here. So that relationship and that group of people continue.
Yeah, what I'll do after this event, after we finish this session this morning, is I'll send out an email, because now that I've got everyone's email addresses, you're not escaping, and I will send out some details and some links of things where to find all of these things, because I think Amanda's just mentioned the Fringe Events website. There's various websites with lists of things to do and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you very much. We must move on. And at the risk of turning this into an advert for Cycle to MIPIM, there's another question here, which I'm going to start with. I think I'm going to start with Amanda, actually, and then maybe we'll come to Nick. But in what ways can going to MIPIM be made sustainable or have more positive impact from a CSR/ESG perspective, particularly given the sort of possibly lower turnout this year, because I think there are a few people who are not going. Do you think this is an opportunity to change the perspective, change the way that the event is perceived, perhaps?
Well, I think there are obvious ones in terms of how you travel and reducing air travel and so on, and you can go by train. I've gone by train for many years. It takes a little longer, but if you factor in your journey to the airport and then waiting and then so on, and it's a more pleasant way to get there. But I tried to think about this in advance, and actually I think the sort of CSR and ESG perspective is what you learn about industry things in relation to climate change or that sort of thing, in terms of people that are going there and exhibiting and doing really interesting stuff that we can all think about and learn about and take back to our offices. And obviously the cycle has very much its own charitable giving element of it. But I think it's bigger than that. Do you know what I mean? I think it's bigger in terms of what you can take away in terms of CSR and ESG.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think this year, I'm sure there's going to be a huge focus on that, because I think one thing that's happened in the last 24 months is the fact that people have started to focus very much on certainly the S and the E and all of those sort of things around it, as well as the kind of charitable side of things. I mean, Nick, have you got thoughts on that? And
yeah, we've for the first time we're carbon counting the ride down to MIPIM, and we've done that in partnership with Mike and his team at Knight Frank, and Gareth and his team at Civic Engineers, who are one of the team sponsors of the ride. And what we want to do is just actually kind of draw a line and say, this is where we're at, and what can we do to reduce our impact. We obviously already know that cycling kind of is more sustainable than either flying or training down, but obviously you've got to feed yourself, and the diet that riders use has quite a big impact on the amount of CO2 that kind of the ride generally produces. But we will be announcing in the run-up to the ride some statistics about the impact the ride has, and some aspirations that we've got for the future in terms of how we might reduce that impact as the years go on. The other thing that obviously that we do is that, if you catch a plane down and a plane back, you've got a certain amount of carbon, but the impact that we're adding on top of carbon, whatever it is, be it lower than flying or not, is that we've over kind of the last 15 years given grants of £4.5 million, and that has had a huge kind of impact on the lives of lots of vulnerable young people, and that's something that doesn't get measured in grams of CO2. So kind of, there's lots of positives to take from, what we're all doing. And I think kind of, as long as we're all moving in the right direction and having the conversation, having it openly and frankly, then I think kind of there's hope for the future.
Yeah. Mike, any thoughts at all on that side of things?
I mean, the ESG agenda is the largest, most prioritized agenda item of any business at the moment, and a lot of people are saying that they're doing it, and there's a lot of talk about greenwashing, and we were talking on the call yesterday, Nick, about our carbon counting and whether or not we should offset. So yeah, I think we're not pretending to be the gurus in this. Our primary objective is to raise money for Club Peloton on the Cycle to Cannes, but we're going great steps now to acknowledge our impact on the environment, which is the first event that Knight Frank have been involved with that we've ever actually done that carbon counting for. I'm boring you, aren't I, with your little pass thing?
Sorry, no, I was just trying to think if I had
move on to the next one.
no.
Have you not seen that pass before, mate?
I was thinking the answer to it. Yeah, I was thinking the answer to a question that's coming up next, and I was thinking whether I had a prop next to me, but I shall tell you why in a minute. Sorry, but yeah, let's take the next question, because I think we can squeeze this one in before the final one, and then a few Q&As if people have any more questions. So I think one of the perceptions of MIPIM is that it's for property developers, architects, and engineers. Is it useful for other people? Amanda, let's start with you, because obviously you're not any of those.
Yes, I would say it is. So I'm in a barrister's chambers. We do the disputes work that comes out of property and construction as a start, or commercial disputes. So we're sort of the lowest below in the pecking order of people that nobody wants the disputes, but somebody has to be there to help with the disputes. And yeah, and I do remember, I think one of the first times you went down there was you, going back to our earlier question, you'd won a piece of work yourselves on the first day that you were there or something, hadn't you? I think it's that kind of. Well, that was can I tell that story? Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Well, somebody went to a nightclub, and we said, look, you don't get work if you're in the nightclub at 4 a.m. And then the next day, somebody came up to us and said, oh, it was great to see so-and-so. We're going to send them a piece of work. It's like, oh, okay.
So it can work. How about Mike, Nick, your thoughts on work for other people?
I mean, so I think unfairly the ride to MIPIM has kind of sometimes been labelled sort of the architect's ride. It's not. Yes, it does have a lot of people who are on the architectural and engineering side on it, but we have had people from the legal side, the finance side. There are engineers, architects, but there are developers as well. Kind of banking. It's quite a mix, and kind of we get people from all walks of life. People are looking to break into the property industry, so they might be marketing agencies that are looking for a new aspect of their business that they want to develop. So the ride does kind of bring lots of different people together quite successfally. And it breaks down those barriers. Kind of, you stick everybody in Lycra, kind of, you can't tell what their corporate wear is. You can't tell how they dress off the bike, necessarily as easily. And it's a really good leveler in that sense.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's a whole diverse group of people that I've met either at the event or on the ride down. There's well-known contractor who comes with us that I'm currently training quite a lot with, a planning lawyer. There's all sorts of people that come on the ride and go to MIPIM. So yeah, it's definitely, I've met all sorts of different people. And Mike, your perspective as well. I think you're not specifically a developer, are you?
No, I'm at the low end. I'm just property management. If you've got any properties that need managing, guys, I'm all ears. But yeah, I mean, it has gone from, I was at Broadgate Estates when Broadgate Headline sponsored, and that was a property management business, and the world of who has cycled to Cannes has evolved. And we've got some, long-termers now. Luke Tozer's on the call. He's been on a few MIPIM rides. So James Mayhew's on the call, and I worked with him at Broadgate, and now he's working for ISG. So as people move around, you get to sort of stay in contact with them, and who knows what comes out of those network of contacts.
People move jobs as a result of the bike ride. It's kind of if you want to do a 7-day interview, kind of the bike ride's a really way of doing it, really good way.
Somebody did say, that these sort of events do have those career opportunities as well. It's not just about business, is it? Somebody said to me about an entirely different event, but a similar sort of principle, isn't, they're great opportunities for recruiting for the person that was attending this particular event. Don't think of it just in one. I think people get very blinkered, isn't, we must win work for our business, we're representing our business, but there is obviously, you have a career as well, and there's all of those sorts of opportunities, I guess, although obviously, again, shouldn't say that people should be recruiting while they're doing MIPIM and business things, but yeah. So very finally, quick question at the end, and then if there are any questions, do pop them in the Q&A. Quick fire, if we have time. Do in one sentence, what single piece of advice would you give to anyone attending MIPIM? Start with Mike.
Didn't see that question coming. Just immerse yourself in it, and get involved with all that you can, because you don't know who you're going to end up meeting. But if you can ride there, do it.
Nick.
Preparation is key. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best.
Particularly if you've got a bicycle and you're going that way. Amanda?
Comfortable shoes, a WhatsApp group if you're going with a group of colleagues, sunglasses, sun cream, lip salve, umbrella, drink plenty of water.
One piece of advice, and we got 20 in one sentence. Brilliant, thank you. So I think, from my perspective as well, I think, just don't go with any expectations and enjoy it, because it is I found it surprisingly enjoyable. I was very apprehensive before I went, and it was just so enjoyable. And, everybody, surprisingly, when you get there, if you've not been before, what amazes me is how open people are to networking and meeting and chatting, and even just standing in the queue to get in a cafe. You'll turn to somebody and say, find out what they do, who they are, and networking, business development, all of that stuff is so much easier in that forum, because people are that's what they're there for. They're not in, there's no kind of, the barriers are down, and people are very much up for conversation and discussion. So,
sorry to interrupt, Stuart. John Fox has texted everyone already, inviting them to drinks on Tuesday night. I'm up for it, John. So if I'm not asleep by 9 p.m, having just cycled there.
Yeah, and Nick, when we all arrive in Cannes, are people allowed to come and see us? How does it work?
Yes. Excuse me. So we arrive on the quayside of the port at about 3:30, and people can come and see us. They'll know they're in the right place when they see the large coach wrapped with Knight Frank Cycle to MIPIM on it, and you'll see people milling around. So do come down and see us.
And again, another opportunity to say hello to people. That was my prop that I was going to look for, is that the cyclists, are we getting medals this year, Nick?
You are.
Yeah. So
you're getting some very ecologically sound wooden medals.
Oh, marvellous. So
they actually biodegrade by the time you get back.
As long as they don't biodegrade while I'm there, because what I was going to say is that actually one of the biggest door openers for me was that medal. And do go up to people who've got the Cycle to MIPIM medal, so it's wooden. Do you want to give a description of what it will look like? Because it got a...
Well, it'll be circular with some print on it, with a normal lanyard.
Yeah. So look out for people wearing some sort of medal. Those people are lovely people. They're probably the nicest people at MIPIM, I think. And do have a chat with us. Ask us how it went, whether we nearly died or whether we drowned or whatever, because it could be anything could have happened in the 900 miles between London and Cannes. And again, that was a really great way I found to meet people, was just to wear that, because actually the cyclists do wear that, because it's having cycled 900 miles, why wouldn't you? So that's it. Great. Thank you very much. I hope we haven't banged on about cycling too much. We're hopefully giving you a little bit of balance of information of what to do and where to find it. I will send out an email afterwards. We will put this recording on YouTube, and hopefully that'll be useful to people who can't make it today. And yeah, thanks to our speakers, to Amanda, to Nick, and to Mike. And we'll see you at the next Construction Cast, which I suspect will be sometime in April, but we'll keep you posted on that. Thank you very much indeed.
Great. Cheers, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.